Hi, I am Marie-Ève Chartrand and I'm going to present Storyboard Pro 7. So when you tell a story, you want this ability to convey that feeling, that excitement that you have about your project to your audience. And that's exactly what Storyboard Pro 7 can do. It is a combination of drawing, scripts, videos, sounds, images, and any camera and animatic editing tools that you wish for. It also seamlessly integrates with Toon Boom Harmony, making your storyboard to animation pipeline seamless. It also exports to a lot of third-party applications, and that makes Storyboard Pro a tool that is extremely easy to integrate in any pipeline. So you can create a project in Storyboard Pro either in 2K, 4K, 8K, or whichever resolution that you want, because it has actually a vector engine behind it. But not only vector, it also has the full power of bitmap. So you have a lot of flexibility when you create a project. And so when looking at the interface, we are going to be able to create drawings and camera motion. We're going to be able to create our scenes and panels. We're going to also handle captions, scripts. We have a lot of options to manage our tools, and you're going to have also a lot of pre-packaged workspace that come with Storyboard Pro, allowing you to work your animatics or your overviews. If you want to look at your storyboard in a traditional horizontal workflow or vertical workflow, so you have a lot of options. And we're going to go through some of these workspace as we go through that demo. But for now, what I want to show you are the drawings capabilities that you have in Storyboard Pro, because they're really exciting. You don't need to have a lot of drawing skills. When you build a storyboard, you can assemble it from images and sounds and videos. But if you want to draw with Storyboard Pro, you have a lot of high quality drawing tools that you can use. I will start my first scene by drawing a background. So today our characters are going to be having a day at the beach, and so I'm going to be drawing sand and a few clouds. And as I'm drawing, I'm going to be able to zoom on my lines as much as I want, and they will never become pixelated because those are vector lines. And on top of it, when I draw, I get individual strokes that I'm going to be able to easily rearrange, scale, rotate, and if I want to, I could also decide to cut a portion of these lines. So if I finish my clouds here, I'm going to grab the cutter tool and I'm going to be able to grab a portion of my lines, move them, or if I want to, I can also delete these lines. But actually what I like the most about the cutter tool is that I have the ability to go and just clip any piece of line that is overlapping in my drawing. And that allows me to draw really clean drawings really quickly. And I really like it because Storyboard Pro is equipped with so many small tools like that that make your pipeline efficient and fast. So that's actually one of my favorite features in Storyboard Pro. And so you also have access to a lot of layers. So I'm going to draw on a separate layer. And on top of it, as I'm drawing on my different layers, I can turn on and off my light tables, which is going to wash out the other layers. So that makes it really easy to know where I'm drawing. So our character is going to be building a little sand castle. So I'm going to be drawing a sand castle on my beach. And if I'm not comfortable with a certain angle as I'm drawing, I can also use the rotate view to be able to change the orientation. So as I'm drawing certain pieces, I can get a more comfortable angle for my hand. So now that I have my background, I'm going to be able to add more panels to my scene by duplicating this panel. So now I have a scene with 3 panels in it, so I can start building the action in my scene. So something else that is really useful in Storyboard Pro is that we have a library. And from this library, I can import and reuse assets in any of my projects. So I'm going to import here the first pose of my character. Next, I'm going to be drawing the second pose in my scene. Something's going to be walking in the scene and I want my character to react to it. But as I'm going to be drawing this second pose, I want to be able to see my previous panel. And to do so, I can turn on the onion skin and I'm going to be able to see my previous and next panels and use them as a reference. And this time, instead of drawing my character with solid vector, I'm going to be using textured vector. So you have access to a lot of different brush tips that have either ink spots or charcoal or any type of texture that you may think of. And on top of it, you will be able to create and import your own textures and create your own brush presets directly in Storyboard Pro. And so right now I'm going to be using my tool presets to have the charcoal pen. And so with this, I'm going to be zooming in and drawing the second pose of my character as he's reacting to whatever is going to be coming in that scene. I'm going to give him a very expressive surprise expression. And then what is nice is that I'm using right now these rough textures, but I still have the ability to edit these lines individually the same way that I edited the different vector strokes earlier in my background. So I'm just going to finish quickly this pose. My character is going to be jumping mid-air and reacting to whatever is coming in. If I want to make sure that my two poses fit together, I can also use my onion skin toolbar to flip between my two poses. And then I have the ability to quickly grab my character and reposition it. So it's really easy to do edits with my character after I've drawn it. So besides using the select tool, I can also use tools like the contour editor. And so the contour editor will allow me to change the shape of my lines. And even if they are textured vectors, I actually have the ability to modify my texture and resize it after I've drawn that. And that's actually a very powerful vantage point for bitmap drawings, because I'm mixing the best of both worlds. I'm using bitmap textures, but I'm also using all the editability of a vector line. And if I want to reposition my entire line, I can grab also the center line editor and redraw and reposition that line after I've done it. And so that's what I mean by Storyboard Pro being so powerful. When you want to draw your drawings, you have a lot of power, not only to draw, but also to modify and retake your drawings after the fact. And so beside that, something else that you can do if you want to quickly readjust colors, you can select your strokes and then click on any colors and then just adjust the colors of your strokes even after you've drawn them. So you have a lot of options. Then something else that you can do, I'm going to go in my third panel, and this time instead of drawing on a vector layer, I'm going to add a pure bitmap layer. And that allows me to work like other bitmap editing software. So if you come from that and you're used to it, you also have access to complete bitmap layers as well. The way I like to use bitmap layers is to sketch my drawings really, really rough poses and have a lot of strokes. And the nice thing about that is that as I'm doing my rough thumbnail, all these strokes are actually just one flat canvas. So I'm able to really easily modify that as one single flat drawing. So I don't have a lot of individual strokes. Something that we did in Storyboard Pro 7 is we focused a lot on the creative freedom of the artist. We increased and improved the responsiveness of the pen. So if you draw really, really quickly as you sketch, you will get a really good response to your pen as you're drawing on the tablet. So if I re-sketch quickly, I will not have any lag or any issue. It's actually a really good drawing feel. So we added a new toolbar called the Pen Settings toolbar. So with this toolbar, I can turn on the stabilizer and actually start drawing lines that are a lot smoother than when it's off. So for example, as I'm cleaning my drawing, even if I'm shaking, my line is going to be quite smooth. And then if I turn it off, you're going to see that if I shake, my line is going to be a lot shakier. So as I'm drawing, it averages my line so that I can see a smooth line as I'm drawing it. In previous version, the smoothing was done after I was done drawing my line. And so that was hard for an artist to see where their final line was. So now with the stabilizer, you're actually able to draw and see the smooth line, the final line as you go. And this for me increased the quality of my drawing by a lot. The other option that we have is the pulled string. And so the pull string allows me to clean my drawing by actually pulling a string. So you can see that I actually have that little string, and as I can start pulling on it, and this will allow me to create sharp angles. And actually, once I tried that option, I thought it was fantastic. It really increased the quality of my cleanup. So it's really an option that I find fantastic, and I would encourage you to try. You can adjust the strength of the stabilizer by changing the value between 0 and 100. Most of the time I would probably be working between 15 and 20, but it all depends on your style and how much your line is shaking, so you can adjust it to any length that you would need. In the pen setting toolbar, there's one more option that we added, and it's the pen pressure feel. So we put a lot of focus on enabling the artist and giving them a lot of creative freedom and the ability to adjust how they use the pressure of their pen. So with this curve, each artist will be able to adjust how hard they want to press on their pen before the line starts to become thicker and thinner. But the other thing is that you'll have the ability to adjust how much pressure you want to put on your pen before you start drawing. And this, I like it very much because it's like drawing on paper. And when I put my pen on a piece of paper, I don't start pressing right away to draw my line. I actually like to position my pen and then draw lightly and see where I'm going to be able to draw. Once I'm happy, then I'm going to press on the pen. When you have a tablet, as soon as you touch the screen, you start drawing, unless you adjust how much pressure you want to put before it starts drawing. And this is something I like very much, because then it's going to allow me to see, okay, I want to be able to put my line here, and then I press to draw my line. So you can adjust the whole style of your pressure. So each artist will be able to adjust the drawing tools the way they want to be able to use them in Storyboard Pro. Something else that we did in Storyboard Pro 7 to increase the quality of the drawing tool was adding options like the pen tilt sensitivity. So I can adjust how much tilt I want to support on my pen. And for example, if I use a tilting pen, I'm going to be able to use the side of my pen to start drawing and sketching thicker lines, the same as I would be using a pencil on paper. And so if I sketch sideways, it's going to be thicker, then I can make my pen straighter and draw darker and thinner lines. So I'm going to be able to really sketch the same way as when I'm drawing on paper. And that is something that I find extremely useful when I'm drawing digitally, to have the same control as when I'm using my pen and paper. Also, if you have the art pen, which is the Wacom pen that has a little bit of a thicker tip, you can also enable the use pen rotation option. And so if I grab a tip that has a little bit less roundness, you're going to see that as I move and rotate my pen, the brush tip also rotates as I rotate the tip along the line too. So you have a lot of options like that you're going to be able to adjust in your drawing tools to create your own brush tips. Once I'm done drawing my characters, I'm going to want to white out these characters so I don't see the background through them. And I can do that in different ways. Obviously, I can actually go ahead and select a preset or a brush that has a draw behind option, and I can do a manual whiteout where I'm just going to go behind my character and just quickly shade it so that I don't see my background through it. So I can do that. But I could also use a different option where I can not only do it automatically on one character, but I can actually do it on multiple layers at the same time. So now I actually have my layer A in both panels selected. So my character is selected in multiple panels at the same time. And I can use options like Generate Automat that will quickly find the silhouette of my character, and I can pick any color I want and then automatically paint my drawings at the same time in both panels. So I could do that in one panel or 32 panels at the same time if I want to. There's many ways that you can edit your layers across multiple panels. So for example, here, I could select my character in both my panels and decide to do a correction. So you may get a retake from a director where you actually have to flip the animation. So I could actually select my character artwork in all these panels and decide to readjust it, reposition it, but I could also flip it back. So maybe the characters is coming in from the other side. So now I can easily do retakes and edit all my panels at the same time. So that's actually extremely convenient and really, really fast when it comes time to do all these adjustments. So beside that, you can also organize your layers. I can grab a few of my layers, for example, my background here, and I could create some groups. So you can organize your layers in groups and subgroups, and you can have as many layers as you want. So you can do a lot of manipulations there too. At the beginning, I created my background and I duplicated it in all my panels. But again, if I want to do some changes, let's say I want to add on my background a seashell. So let's do a small seashell here. What's going to happen is that I'm adding it on the first layer, or the first drawing, but it is not in the other panels. So that means that I would have to copy and paste it again in all my panels. So it's not too bad if I only have 2 or 3 panels. But if I have a scene that has 50 panels and I want to change my background across, it's a lot of manipulations. But actually Storyboard Pro is optimized so that you don't have to do a lot of these manipulations one by one. So instead of modifying my background and then copying it, something that I can do is I can right click and then share this drawing. Once that drawing is shared, then I'm going to be able to modify it everywhere in my project. So right now, what I'm going to do is copy this layer, and then I'm going to be able to actually paste it in multiple panels at the same time. So that's another thing that is really convenient. I don't have to copy and paste it one by one. I could copy and actually hold it across my entire scene. But if you had copied a cycle, let's say that you have a character running on 2 or 3 panels and you would like the character to be running across, you can also do that and paste that loop. So your character could be running 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 throughout your entire scene. So I'm going to paste it across my entire scene. And now that my background has been pasted in my scene and has been shared, if I decide to add another seashell, let's say I decide to add another one here, now it's actually going to put it in all 3 of my scenes. So now it's everywhere. And so I only have one instance of that drawing. So it makes my project also much lighter. So that's really convenient. But if I want to, I can also decide on that last panel to unlink only this instance, and maybe I transform the seashell into a little hermit crab. And so now I have my shared background on also my modified backgrounds. So now in my story, I'm going to create a second scene. And so you can actually create scenes with multiple panels in it. And so in this scene, I'm going to import a background. So once again, in my library, I can import a sea background. So now our character is going to be swimming in the sea. And instead of drawing it this time, we have another tool that is extremely useful called the stamp tool. And so in the stamp tool, I'm able to create a lot of custom stamps or use some existing ones to print patterns like bubbles, snowflake, trees, and flowers. But I can also use them to create cycles. So for example, if I grab this bear here, I do have a cycle with 4 poses. So I can decide for this scene to duplicate my panels maybe 3 more times so that I have 4 panels. And so in the first pose with my stamp, I'm going to be stamping my character's first pose. And as soon as I stamp it, it goes to the next pose. So now if I go to my next panel, I'm going to be able to stamp the next pose, then third one and fourth one. And so now I have a scene where my character is swimming across the background. So a lot of storyboard artists find this tool extremely useful because they can use that for cycles and patterns and call outs, but they also like to create hand packs and mouth packs or put different character reference poses in it so that they can see character lineups and different models. So now that my character is swimming across, I can start building my story. So in my panels, I also have the options to write different captions. I can have dialogues, action notes, sluggings, and so on. So I'm going to be typing a sentence. So this is a fun day at the beach. And then you can see here, as I type my story, I did a typo. And now in Storyboard Pro 7, we do have a spell check, which will allow me to correct that mistake. So I can right-click in, choose a few suggestions. This is a fun day at the beach. And so as I build my story like this, I'm going to be able to write my different captions and action note and build my story. So it's actually quite quick to build your storyboard from scratch directly in Storyboard Pro. But an aspect that is really important into creating a complete storyboard with an animatic is the ability to create camera motions. So with the camera tool, I can reposition the camera frame on my character, but I can also create camera motions. And this, I can do that if I want to using my timeline. And so my timeline will allow me to adjust the timing of my scene. So I can quickly adjust the timing of my panels and create keyframes for my cameras. I can create an in frame and then an out frame. So I can choose to do it using the timeline or simply using my thumbnails without having to play with the timing. So depending how you work, you can do it with or without any timing. And so if I want to, I can adjust the position of my frame A and the position of my frame B on zooming in on my character. But right now I have this camera frame only in one panel, but you can easily adjust that camera to span over several panels so that as I scroll through my scene, that camera actually plays over the 3 poses of my character. And then the last thing that I want to do to complete this portion of my storyboard is also animating a layer. So the thing that is going to come into my scene and scare my little character is a bird. And so I'm going to import a bird in my scene so I can animate it fly across the screen. So I can do that by adjusting the first position of my character and add again a keyframe on that layer and then add a second keyframe where I can move it across the screen. But maybe actually midway, I'm going to make it dive into the scene. And then very quickly, I actually have a bird that flies in the screen. But right now, it's just flying across the first panel. Once again, I would like that to span across my 3 panels. And so I can take that layer and actually spread that motion across my multiple panels. And now I actually have the bird who's flying into my scene. So you can really quickly build an entire storyboard with drawing, writing a new caption, reusing backgrounds, having camera motions, and having an animated layer across your screen in no time. So if you have your story written outside of Storyboard Pro, you're going to have the ability to import it directly in your project. So I can import a caption. For example, I could be importing a final draft file, or I could be importing a text file. So right now I'm just going to import a simple text file, and that's going to import my entire script directly in Storyboard Pro. Now, instead of working in this workspace, I'm going to use the vertical workspace where I'm going to be able to populate my caption. So if I go back to my storyboard view, I can see my entire story. And then I really like this next option. I'm going to be able to select text. For example, here I have my cute animal saying, "What a fun day at the beach." So if I want to create the caption for my character here, I can actually simply drag and drop it. I don't have to copy and paste it. I can use my stylus and quickly drag and drop information like dialogue or my action notes and so on. So it's actually really easy to populate your storyboard without having to even use the keyboard. So it's actually another feature that I like very much in Storyboard Pro. So you have the ability to also set which captions you want to have by default in your project. You may want to use some different captions, maybe just dialogue and action notes, or something else that would be specific to you. So you can set up that default. And something else that you can do, so for example, for this scene with the bird flying in, I could have also added a sketch caption. So if I go back to caption, you can add a sketch caption, and instead of writing, you would be able for this panel to directly write in, or to directly draw in your caption. So for example, here, I could draw a bird where the bird is just flying in. So you can also sketch directly in your caption. So you have a lot of options when it comes to building your storyboard like this. Something else that I can import are backgrounds. So if I add another scene to my storyboard, now we're going to be traveling to Korea. So I would like to import a background of a Korean city. So in Storyboard Pro 7, now if I want to import images, I no longer have to go through File, Import. I can directly import them from my browser. So I can grab this multi-layer PSD file and import it in my scene. And then I'm going to have the option to choose if I want my layers to be together or separated. And here actually I would like to access my separated layers. So now you can simply drag and drop them into your project from the browser, and that's extremely convenient. And so now I have access to all the layers of that background. So I can turn off and on whichever layer I want to have. I can animate them, so now I can start manipulating my Photoshop file directly into Storyboard Pro. Right now we imported the background in Storyboard Pro, but we also have the ability to drop background layouts directly into Storyboard Pro. So if I create a new scene, I'm going to be able to add various vanishing guides. So in Storyboard Pro 6, we already had the 1-point perspective, 2-point perspective, and 3 points, but we also added guides like the isometric perspective. So if you want to be able to draw backgrounds for gaming, we also have a fisheye perspective, and you also have the 3-point perspective pan, and you also have a 4-point continuous perspective if you want to be doing some VR backgrounds. So for example, if I use a 2-point perspective, I'm going to be able to adjust the position of my line as well as my vanishing points. For example, here, I could adjust the position of my points so that I have an angled background. Right now, I'm actually going to position my line to be straight, and I'm going to adjust it so that I see a few less lines. So from that point, I'm actually able to start drawing, and my pen is going to be aligned with the vanishing points. I can really quickly draw lines to be able to draw a house, for example, here. And then I can bring back that feature that I like about the cutter tool, where I can start clipping anything that sticks out on my background. So very quickly, you're going to be able to draw quite advanced and intricate layouts. But the one I want to actually show you is the 4-point vertical perspective. So I can also import guides that were created before. So maybe I want to reuse some guides in between my different projects or different scenes. So for example, here, I can import a couple guides in my scene. And then if I turn this off, you're going to be able to see that I have here on this one, actually a vertical curved background. And so I can bring in, let me bring in from my library some background. I'm going to import here a rough background that I started earlier. And then with this curve guide, you're going to be able to see that I can actually draw my lines, and they are sticking to the guides and they are curved. So here I can continue this background. And if I want to, I can actually use my Alt key or my Option key to start drawing lines that are exactly on the same axis. And that's really handy if I want to be able to draw windows that are all aligned in the same line. So here, if I start drawing vertically, I can actually just lock those into places. If I want to, I can also disable the option to be locked to my guide. So temporarily, I can be drawing freehand. So maybe I want to draw a few more mountains or trees and bushes in the back. Or maybe inside the window, I want to be drawing additional chair and conference table. So I can draw freehands, or I can draw actually locked to my guides. And so a background like this, once completed, could be looking like this. So now if I turn off this rough, you're gonna see that I actually have here this background that was created using the different guides. So you're gonna have the ability to import images, draw from scratch, or you can draw background layouts using the guides and create really advanced sets that are using all sorts of vanishing points. Now I would like to show you what a complete storyboard looks like. So I will open a different project and I will show you a completed storyboard. So now we have our completed story, and if I go to my timeline view, you can see that actually I have a lot of elements. I have a lot of panels that have been timed, I have camera motions, I also have layer motions, and I also have a lot of sounds. So that's another aspect that you can do in Storyboard Pro, is importing sound and editing your sound. But for now, if we look actually at our panels, I'm going to be able to do my timing and adjust the duration between my different scenes. So for example, here, I can extend my panel and change the duration of this panel, but also push down everything else happening in my timeline. So if I want to change the duration of a panel without pushing down everything, I can also adjust with the Option key between two panels and then change the duration only between either two panels or the end of a scene and the next scene. Something that was added in Storyboard Pro 7 that will make animatic editing a lot easier is that you now have the animatic mode. And with the animatic mode, I will have the option not only to create a space between two scenes, but I can also select forward everything and push down my entire storyboard. And so I can go along my storyboard and create gaps between my scenes to create additional scenes in between at a later time. So I can start building the sections of my story that I know, and I don't have to put blank scenes in between anything. I can just create these gaps. And so that will make animatic editing a lot faster and a lot more convenient. And if you have gaps that you want to remove, you will also have the ability to do a ripple delete space to bring it back together. So now you gained a lot more flexibility when doing your timing. So something else that you're going to be able to do when you're building your animatic is creating transitions. So right now I have a scene that ends up with a black panel, and I would like to transition with a crossfade to my next panel. So you can easily add transitions to your storyboard, and then if I play this back, you can see now that my previous scene is fading into the next one. And so you're going to be able to adjust your transition. So if I go here, you can see that I actually have a few types. I have an edge wipe, I have a clock wipe, I have a slide. So depending if I change my transition, then it's going to behave differently. So you have controls as well on transition when building your storyboard. Something else that we added in Storyboard Pro 7 was the ability to not only see your timecode, which you could see in the previous version, but also your scene and panel numbers. But on top of it, you're going to be able to adjust your settings so that you can also see captions. So for example, if I would like to see my dialogue caption so that I can see as I go what my characters are saying, if I play back or I'm in the room with a director and I'm trying to do reviews, so my assistant is going to be able to write down the numbers and see really clearly what's going on, and they don't have to go and read the small information in the panels. So now with these overlay in the camera view, doing reviews has become a lot easier. To continue on what was added in Storyboard Pro 7, something else that you can do is that you're going to be able to take backgrounds or elements that you've drawn in a panel. And so for example here, I'm going to turn off this background, and instead of having the background inside of my layers, I'm going to be taking this background and putting it directly on my image and video track. And now that means that something that I drew here can be put on the image and video track and not only span one panel, but I'm going to be able to make it go across my entire scene or even multiple scenes if I want to. So now I have one image that goes across multiple panels. So earlier I showed you that you could share your backgrounds, but here you can also just put one drawing on your image and clip layer, and you're going to be able to span it across. So something else that you're going to be able to do is that you can take drawings and blur them out to either put something out of focus or put emphasis on a camera motion. So I will turn on the original version of this drawing, and then I can take this layer, just going to quickly turn it into a bitmap, and once that's done, I'm going to be able to apply effects on it to either do a simple blur, a radial zoom blur, or even a directional blur. So for now, I just want to blur my drawing because it's inside the water puddle. So I can increase that radius. Let's just give it a bit of a blur value and then blur it out. So now I can quickly add blur effects. Like I was saying, you can also emphasize a camera motion. So for example, here in this panel, I have a very short camera motion that zooms in really quickly on the character. So we did a zoom blur to make the camera motion seems to go faster. And that you don't have to export your drawing outside of Storyboard Pro. You're going to be able to do it directly inside the software. So another element in Storyboard Pro that you can do to build your animatic, like I was saying earlier, are sounds. So you can have sound files that are like sound effects, dialogue, and music, and you can have as many tracks as you want. And also in Storyboard Pro 7, you're going to now be able to name them and reorder them as well. Something else that you can do in Storyboard Pro is the ability to do sound editing. So you can import sound files and sync them with your storyboard. So you can have dialogue, you can have sound effects, you can have music. So you can have as many soundtracks as you want. You can rename them, organize them the way you want them to be, and then have your animatic with sound. So I can import sound from my library or directly from my web browser and drop them into my timeline. So here I have some sounds, I have some dialogues, but I also have some sound effects. And I'm going to browse for a plain engine sound file, and I'm going to be able to drop that into my sound layer. And so from here I can grab the plain engine and drop it with my first scene. And now if I play back my scene, I'm going to be able to see my scene with sound. Another thing that I can do is if I don't already have my dialogue recorded, but I'm building my story, I can create scratch track directly in Storyboard Pro and record my own voice or other sound effect. So I could right click and record a sound. And so for example, in this scene, my character is going to be saying, "Here boy." So I'm going to record a scratch track of that and put it in my project. "Here boy." And once I'm done recording it, then I can put it in my scene. So I'm going to be able to reposition the sound in my scene as well as adjust the duration. I could also adjust the volume so that it's louder, or even add keyframes if I want to do some fade in and fade out on my sound. Now if I play it back, I'm going to be able to hear, "Here boy." But I may find that it's a little low, or maybe I want to boost it a little bit. So now with Storyboard Pro 7, you actually have the ability to take a clip or multiple clips at the same time and then adjust the audio gain. So maybe I'm going to add 10 in my gain and press OK. And now if I play back my sound again, "Here boy," it's going to be just a little bit louder. So you're going to be able to adjust and edit your sound directly in the software. And you may also have noticed that we now have also a separator between the sound and the headers. So if I scroll down in my sound, I still have my storyboard track as my header visible so that I'm able to sync my sound and see what panel it is aligned with. So another thing that you can do when you're recording elements like scratch track, you can actually right click on a clip and set the colors. So I like to set them as lime green, but it could be anything you want, and make sure that I know, okay, this is a soundtrack that I'm going to have to bring back later on with the real sound. So you have a lot of options to be able to edit sound directly in the software. So something else that you can do in Storyboard Pro is import videos. So right now we've been drawing and importing images, but I will also like to import maybe an opening credit. So from the file menu, I'm going to be able to import a video file. So I'm going to browse for maybe here my opening credit file. And I'm going to set it in a new video track. But now what is new in Storyboard Pro 7 is that you can import the audio as well as the alpha of your video. So now I'm going to import this in my scene, and I have my opening credit. But now it's overlapping all my panels. So you can now use the new animatic mode that I showed earlier, and you can select all your storyboard and push it down. And you're going to be able to see that all my sound follows along as I move down all my panels and images. If there were some layers where you didn't want to change the sound, you would have the ability to lock or unlock the syncing of the sound with your panels. So if I scroll back down, for example, here, I could unsync so that the sound of my video remains synced up. So now I can actually play my storyboard with my opening credit. But now, I might also want to use some videos as references. So maybe I want to change that scene, or I want to build this scene using a live reference. So from my library, I can also import video files directly in my storyboard. So I can drop that file directly in my video. And now I can actually look at that video as a reference. But right now it's overlapping everything, so you can easily grab your video and make it smaller and put it in the corner. But it also is overlapping my background, so you do have the ability to also change the opacity of your clip. So maybe I'm going to put it as 75% opacity, and I'm going to be able to see my background through it. The other thing is that if I extend my video to be longer and overlap with my next scene, you're going to see that as my camera moves, the video is actually following the camera. So videos are also locked to the camera. So it makes it really convenient when you're importing videos and doing camera editing in Storyboard Pro. So you may have noticed that my next scene here is actually a 3D set. So you don't only have a 2D environment in Storyboard Pro, you're actually able to use an entire 3D space and import 3D models directly in Storyboard Pro and have 2D layers interacting with 3D objects. So that allows you to build storyboards not only for 2D animation, live actions, but also for 3D projects. So there's a lot of things that you're going to be able to mix inside Storyboard to build your entire animatic. So something that I like very much about using 3D objects in Storyboard Pro is that you can grab elements, for example, like the ramen cart that I have here, and if I need to reposition it in the environment, I'm going to be able to snap it to my 3D surface, which means that as I move my cart along the street, it's going to stay locked to the street, but also get bigger and smaller. So that makes it really easy to readjust your scene. And so if I put it back to where that was, the other thing that I'm going to be able to do as well is that I can select not only the full object, but I can access sub nodes. So for example, here, I would be able to grab this lantern, and the same way as I animated the bird before, I'm going to be able to key that lantern and animate it rotating in the wind. So there's a lot of things that you're going to be able to do with these elements. Now, I have these 2D elements interacting with 3D. But when I'm adding new layers, sometimes it might be a little bit difficult to position your new 2D layer at the right location or the right scale. But you have a tool that will allow you to create a 2D layer on your 3D surface. So you can see as I move my cursor, it's becoming bigger and smaller as I go up and down the street. If I wanted to draw a poster on this billboard here, I could click and create a 2D layer at this exact distance. Now that I created my layer, I'm going to draw on this billboard an advertisement for a cruise ship. So maybe draw a boat, a cloud, and some edges to my poster. And then I'm going to quickly paint it. And so from there, I'm actually able to take this poster and actually move it on any other walls or any other surface, even the street in my 3D set. So you can actually have your 2D layers and 3D layers interacting really easily. But if you don't want to have to deal with the entire 3D environment, then you can also use 3D in a simpler form. So for example, in this scene, I also have my 3D cart, but I don't have an entire 3D scene. Actually, if we look at it, it is just a flat 2D rendition of my 3D model. So what you can do is import your 3D model in the scene, but instead of using it as a whole 3D element, you can use it as a 2D model. So for example, I'm going to be able to select any pose or any angle if I want from my 3D object and reposition it and choose exactly the angle that I want for my scene and put it in my scene, and I can update it at any time that I want. So I don't have to go in my 3D software and take 100 screenshots of all the angles of my object. I can just import my 3D object in here and use it as a rendered 2D model. So it makes using 3D objects in Storyboard Pro really easy. So you can have access to this entire 3D environment or use it as a 2D flat. If you want to use the 3D environment, you don't necessarily need 3D objects. You could easily use the 3D environment with 2D drawings. So for example, here you can see that we set up our 2D layers as a multiplane, but just with 2D drawings. So you can easily adjust the distance of your elements from the camera using tools like the maintain size, which will allow you to push back and forth your layers closer and away from the camera, and the maintain size will adjust the size as you're pushing them closer, further away from the camera to maintain the ratio between these layers. And that's actually really convenient. So now when I look at my scene with the camera motion, I have this multiplane effect happening, but just with 2D layers. So you can also use that 3D environment with 2D layers. So in Storyboard Pro, you already had the ability to split and extract work, but now you also have everything simplified into one new view, the project management, where you're gonna also be able to link these different projects that you want to merge back into your current one. So it makes it really easy to keep track of everything that you've shared with the different revisionists and storyboard artists on the project. And so once they have done changes, so for example, in this scene, we had our storyboard artists fixing the shading on the dog. So if I go in my scene 4, so my dog was missing the shading and I sent it out for review. So I'm going to be able to merge back the changes in my storyboard and select options like merging the most recent, merging tracked panel, or just replace the artwork. Maybe I don't want to change any of the captions or the timing that they've done in their storyboard. So maybe I just want to merge back the artwork. So now if I import it, we're going to see that all my panels were updated in this scene, and now my dog actually has the shading that was needed. Something else that you can do as you're working on your storyboard and you're doing some corrections, you can enable options like track changes. You're going to be able to make changes and Storyboard Pro will keep track of those. So for example, in this panel, I'm going to add additional droplets on my background. And as I'm making these changes, you can see that Storyboard Pro is turning this panel yellow and tracking the change. You can also see in your captions that a new caption has been added to add revision notes. So if I wanted to give corrections or if I want to write the corrections that I've done, I can use this new caption to communicate with my supervisor or communicate with the storyboard artist on the project. And so if I am a supervisor and I want to approve some of these changes that have been done, you can also go through and validate all the changes. So you're going to be able to go through and check all the revision notes and validate either one or all the changes in the projects or in the scene. So you have a lot of tools to be able to collaborate with other people on the project while using Storyboard Pro. Finally, but not the least, is that you are able to export your storyboard in multiple formats. So that's one place where Storyboard Pro really integrates well with a lot of tools in your pipeline. So when it comes time to exporting, you're going to be able to export all your images as bitmap, or all the background layouts that you've drawn in Storyboard Pro. Maybe you want to export them and paint them in an external software. You can export CSV files, so you maybe want to have an entire shot list of everything that you have in your storyboard. You can export to ADL, AFF, and XML if you want to send all your timing and your images to a third-party editing software. But I think one that is really key is the export to PDF. So if I'm looking at exporting to PDF, so you have a lot of presets that you can choose from. But if you want to, you can also modify those. So you're going to be able to adjust your different panels, how the camera motions will be represented, if you're going to have logos, changing the headers and footers. So there's a lot of options that you can customize to export your PDFs if you want to change from the presets that are provided already. And so if I show you what one of these storyboards may look like, so if I go into my storyboards, so you can see now that my storyboard has been exported, and I decided which caption would be exported, how my different camera motions will be represented. So this is what a final storyboard exported in the 3-panel layout may look like. But again, you have a lot of flexibility on how you want to export this storyboard. Another thing that you can do is export to Harmony, and that will allow you to export all your different scenes and automatically create Harmony project using the camera motions that you created, your artwork, the sound, the right duration. So it saves you a lot of manual work in creating your animation project. So there's a seamless integration happening with Harmony. Something else that you can do is you can export your project to tools like Final Cut Pro, Premiere Pro, and Avid. And you're going to be able to export all the metadata, all the timing, all the camera motions that you created in Storyboard Pro and automatically recreate it in these editing tools. But if you do changes in these editing tools, you're going to be able to bring them back and conform them back to Storyboard Pro. So if you're doing your editing in another third-party software, you're going to be able to push those back and conform back in Storyboard Pro so that your storyboard and your animatic are matching. And finally, you can also export to movies. So you're going to be able to have a time code burned in it. You're going to be able to have camera grids or any information that you want, and then export your full animatic as a movie. So for example, we can see what the storyboard looks like as an animatic.
Here, boy. Enjoy your meal.
This is unacceptable! That was great! Let's go again! Who's in, huh?
So I hope you enjoyed this demo of Storyboard Pro 7. I encourage you to go download the new trial and test it out today.